Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of XenoChat, the Xenogears Villains episode. Yeah, this is a really exciting one. But I figured I'd take a second to talk to you about it real quick because there's something to say about this episode. It is kind of a weird one, for us at least. So, long story short, I ran into some issues, and those issues included me losing all of my audio from that session. It was like a 4-hour session, all of it gone. Yep, 4 whole hours of my life down the gutter. Fun, isn't it? So what we did basically was I re-recorded my audio for that episode. A cat actually recorded without their headphones, and I could actually hear myself in their recording, so I basically dubbed over myself for that episode. So if I sound a bit weird or out of place, that's probably why. But I have full faith that Tyler will be editing this into something that sounds somewhat coherent. So yeah, that's going to be what you're going to hear today. Hopefully it sounds great, and hopefully you all enjoy it. In any case, thank you guys for supporting us as always. Y'all are beautiful. Y'all are awesome. Enjoy the episode.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of XenoChat. I'm one of the hosts, Tyler, along with Justin.
What's going on, everyone?
Alright, we got a big panel with us today. First up, we have Kat.
Hello.
And we have Mary.
Hello.
And we have Chris.
Hi.
And we have Brielle.
Hello.
And we got Jessi.
Hi.
Yeah. Alright, yeah, welcome to another episode of XenoChat. So we got a big cast today because we got a big topic that we're going to be working on, and that is villains throughout the Xeno series.
Everybody's favorite.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we got... there's all sorts of different factions and different levels of villains throughout the series, but they always, throughout the Xeno games, always have to have, really good villains.
Yeah. They're often very much gray-colored villain, as in, they have actual pretty complex ideals and stuff that just are, the other side of the coin, but, they're not always just there to be evil. They're just, complex and well-made, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Also, question, did Jessi ever do her intro?
You're right. Jessi, this thank you for remembering, Mary. Yeah, Jessi, this will be the first episode where you can actually go into your Zeno backstory.
Oh.
Would you like to share that with us?
Yes. So by Zeno Backstory, you mean how I discovered the games and whatnot?
How you got into
Exactly.
Xeno, basically.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
So how I got into Xeno was, I was a kid with a PS2 and a very large interest in anime that was finally being known and understood to my mom, and she would often for Christmas shop out of the bargain bin, right? And what I think happened was one day, I want to say Christmas of 2004, she probably went into Best Buy and was like, "Oh yes, I have found an anime for $14.99. It is a greatest hits, and I would like to purchase this one anime for my daughter." And I received it for Christmas, and for the first year, I was a little bit too young to understand it, I guess. I tried to play it once, and it didn't really click. And then I came back to it, and I really, really got into it and enjoyed it. And the rest is history for another episode. but now I'm here and still talking about Xenosaga many years later. So, hello everybody.
Yeah.
Hell yeah,
Yes.
thanks, Grandma.
You
Yee! Very nice to have
Grandma. Does that make me great grandma?
oh. You recently started Xenogears, didn't you?
I did, yeah. I did a little Twitch stream earlier this week where I played about the first 3 hours of Xenogears. We got out of the forest.
Nice.
Ellie tried to shoot me.
As she does.
As she does.
Satane came in a big old steampunk crab and saved us. So
I love when Sidon comes into the scene with just some random thing he found somewhere and just go like, hey, I'm gonna save you with this giant weird robot thing I found.
Yeah. It was like 3 hours of I know this guy and being like, wow, Faye is actually a goofball.
Always a first for everybody. Everybody looks at Faye and thinks, oh, I'm going to be really brooding. And then you find out, no, he's just a goofball teenager.
They make him look so angry for no reason.
Well, speaking of Xenogears, will be our first pit stop in this Villain Express we got going on here. So shall we get started?
Yeah.
Okay, let's kind of start on kind of the bottom rung of villains. How about that Vanderkam?
I love the description y'all got going on here.
Yeah, I wrote that. I called him a cross-faced doofus with a temper.
Yep,
That's exactly what he is.
Yeah, and he's part of. Is he part of Gepler, or is he part of?
He's
Okay,
one of
yes.
Ramses' soldiers, I think, or he falls under the command of Ramses. But he's not a very good soldier.
Isn't
Yeah.
No, yeah, he gets demoted, doesn't he?
Isn't he loaned out to Eva? Ava?
I think so. Ave? That's
Ave. Okay, it's Ave.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think
I've
it's
always
Ave.
been so unclear on some of the pronunciations for this segment.
I think later on, I
It's
can't
cool.
remember when, but he also gets some power from Grahf, and that's how he kind of goes away.
Yeah, he gets souped up from Grahf, but then
Then
But
I
then,
think we smack him to dust, basically, or he explodes or something.
that and Faye goes into id mode and just
Yeah, that too.
I think
the
he's the
crap out
first
of him.
person that Grahf gives the power to.
I believe
Yeah,
so,
and-
yeah. Because it was in the desert.
yeah. Mhm.
I was gonna say, isn't he actually really receptive to that offer too?
Yeah, he is. From what I remember, anyways.
Also, I see this really weird note on the wiki that says the
Mhm.
name Vanderkam may be a reference to Jean-Claude Van Damme. Are you kidding me with that?
Whoa.
Oh my god.
Oh, the wiki. I would not trust the wiki just because of the history of the wiki.
Like,
Yeah.
It's still
Where would that
entertaining
come
to go
from?
check it out, though.
But then we do have Vandam. So, but that's like decades later.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
wow.
Oh, who knows?
It's so random to pull from.
People pull for some interesting
Yeah.
things in general.
Yeah, like not to get ahead, but some of Cherenkov's story was definitely lifted from Total Recall, and I think there's a love of action movies among some of the Monolith devs.
I could definitely believe that.
I can believe that too, actually.
But yeah, is there anything else you want to say about him?
I think
I think that's pretty much it. Maybe.
Vanderkam. Vanderkam is one of the things that oh god, he's one of the guys that is easy to like one-off make references to in later Xeno games that I've noticed.
Yeah. Because there's always one character in all the Xeno games that's called that, and that's basically, most of the time, a very similar personality as well. Except, the Xenoblade 2 one is probably the only exception, I think. But yeah.
Yeah. So I think they made him a real character, as opposed to just like a side bit. He's like, I think the Vanders are usually stationed by the Ramses likes to get beat down and sort of like be not the puppy that gets kicked, but be sort of like, oh yeah, bad guy in enemy army isn't treated well, doesn't treat others well, and is just like sort of like the line level like cashier, the McDonald's cashier bad guy.
Alright. Shall we move to the next one?
Yeah, so next we have Ellie's, well, I call them the Dork Squad, but can't remember what the retrograde guys called them. I had a funny name for them. But anyway, it's they're also Gebler, correct? Or
Yep.
Yes, they are.
yeah,
Yes, they are.
yeah, it's the squad that was put under Ellie. So that includes Strotsky, Vance, Helmholtz, Rank, and Breuer. Yeah, they're kind of, I mean, I guess small fry in comparison to the rest of the plot, but
They do show up quite a few times, so I think once in the desert. God, I forgot all of the other plays, but I know they show up. Oh yeah, there's one time where they also invade Bart's base that was in the mountain thing.
Yep,
That's their first.
Yeah, that's why. That's why they're introduced. But I think we see them a bit later as well in the further part of the desert, and maybe another part later. But I forgot.
I think they show up on disc 2 when Ellie is doing her thing where she starts to remember her past lives.
Yeah.
They show up as well when she has drive in her system and Faye has to have a one-on-one battle with her.
Yeah, that's something I remember too that happened.
Yeah, they kind of go through an arc of their own, and I know in disc 2 they kind of basically become good guys. Because at first they're kind of disrespectful towards Ellie, aren't they? But then
they are.
Oh,
turn
yeah.
around. Yeah.
Very much so.
Turn themselves around.
So it's basically of this group. Sorry.
No, go on.
This group.
So with this group, they're largely, there's 5 of them, so it's hard to characterize all of them. But Rank sort of speaks for most of them, despite looking sort of like a rough brute. But by the end, I think Ellie gets through to him, and then the rest are like, okay, yeah, we'll stop being bad guys. And I think around that time is the part where Ramses decides that he wants to destroy Nissan in Vendetta, and Ellie goes, no, I don't think so. It's like, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. I wasn't expecting the small fry to be at the top of the dock.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of how it went. I think it went from the small people, so we can go ahead and get through them as fast as possible, and then get to the nitty gritty, which are the ones that are going to probably be talked about for anywhere from 10 to 40 minutes.
Understandable.
Because there's a lot. But yeah, Rank is also the most friendly of them. Even in the beginning, you could just tell he's kind of like, he's a bit of a brute, but he's more so, he's just a guy who's doing his job. He's the most level-headed of them all. And throughout the game, he ends up seeing Faye, the protagonist, more as a rival than an enemy. Like, he'd rather just go ahead and like best him in like a fight instead of a fight to the death kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. Oh, there's from what I can remember, one is just very silent, one is more the, I guess, navigator of the group. I forget about the fourth one, but the last one was, I remember seeing this guy and going, "You are such a jerk." Which, he looks like a jerk. Vance looks like a jerk. He literally looks like one of those, like, frat boys back in the 90s, and it makes me so angry every
He
single
looks
time I
like
see
a
him.
Kevin type of jerk.
He does.
I remember being like about Helmholtz's look, because glasses guy, like he looks like a purple
Glasses guy.
purple version of like the aged down handsome version of Hojo that I used to draw back in the day. FF7.
Actually, I can see
such a
that.
small part.
He does look pretty cool, though.
I can see that, actually. Because I think the first time I saw the game when I was like 14, like when I finally actually got to sit down, because I actually tried playing the game as a kid and I could not comprehend it, and I didn't pick it back up until I was like, I want to say 14, and my friend was playing, and I actually think I remember being like, "Is that like Sephiroth's like brother or something?"
I like it.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
We good to move on?
Yeah.
Okay. So next up was a bit of a surprise, but Hammer, your bro, in Xenogears.
Your bro,
he
your merchant
betrays
bro.
you. Yeah, he betrays you and killed
How
Ellie's
dare he.
mom.
How dare he?
I didn't see that
How many
coming
of you
at all.
actually saw that coming with him?
I did not. I
Didn't.
did not at all.
Gave you trust issues because it goes to show you that you could have somebody be as friendly as possible to you, and they could just turn out to be, well, quite frankly, a piece of shit.
Yeah. Though I think in the case of Amber, it's also a lot of the circumstance around, like, the plot where, like, maybe he felt so trapped to a point that he lost his mind and started being desperate. I think if it was into another type of, like, environment, he would not have turned the way he did. But, yeah. It was still like, no, why you do this? Why?
It came out of left field.
We could have helped you, bitch!
It really did come out of left field.
Yeah.
Also, Jessi, I hope you're muted because Xenogears spoilers.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, spoiler alert.
Well, I hear nothing from Jessi, so, thumbs up.
What we could do is post it in Discord and let Jessi know when it's safe to come back.
Okay. I was actually about to suggest the same thing. Be like, Jessi, no, listen.
Okay.
Maybe we should make a not safe for Jessi roll and spoiler tag like we did for Nick.
Okay. All right, but yeah, it's very unfortunate, but I guess it's understandable based on like how his character he lived in the D block with all the other prisoners, and there wasn't there like big like racism against like demi-humans in Kislev as well, or well, definitely from the Emperor.
Yeah.
Or Kaiser, sorry.
Yeah, the Kaiser, that's right.
So, yeah, so it's unfortunate, but I guess I understand, but at the end, he did feel bad for what he did, but I wish he didn't have to, die.
Yeah.
We were all rooting for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish he didn't have to turn the way he did. But like I said, it's part of how like the environment around like the characters made some of them turn like not in the best of ways because of the pressure of what was happening and stuff. So yeah, he just cracked and could not resist trying to get stronger to get out of whatever he was trapped of.
And sometimes when you think you have nothing and somebody offers you the power, you just go absolutely nuts.
Yeah,
with
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what happened with him. Sadly. Alright. I think that sums it up for Hammer.
He also
Okay.
gave us.
Alright.
He also gave us the mad skills line.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But we were going to jump to the girls next, right?
Yep.
The girls, yep. The
Princess
Neo
girls. I think
remember
I'll
the-
let Kat
wanna-
jump into that.
Yeah, you want to take the lead on that, Kat?
My girls, I love them. I love them forever. So the Neo elements, Dominia, Calvena, Talone, and Seraphita are four of my favorite characters in Xenogears, period. Let's see, all of them were sort of misfits that would not generally progress in Solarian society if not for Ramses's penchant for elevating people who are misfits in general. Dominia is a special case among them because she was a survivor of Elru when it attacked it. And Dominia in general, like, I'm not gonna push my ship agenda, but Dominia has a fierce attachment to Ramses because he essentially saved her life. Seraphita, I think, I don't remember where they found Seraphita, but she was going to be thrown into the Soylent system, and at some point Ramses said, no, let's keep her, she's powerful. It doesn't matter if they're demi-human. I'm just sort of imagining Ramses as the Rock going, it doesn't matter! So we got Dominia, Seraphita. Talone is another weird one. Talone was a cyborg project. I went into research Talone before the episode, and I always thought that she was one of Krillian's failed experiments, but I don't, his name isn't mentioned on the wiki, and I didn't really have any other source to go through, but 90% of her body is mechanical, including her brain, and the introduction of Talone and Seraphita, when you fight them at first in Zeboim, they make a Star Trek reference. They make a Star Trek Next Generation reference because she has a positronic neutron brain, which Seraphita doesn't understand tech words, so she calls it genentonic futon brain, and that sort of sets the two of them up as the dumb one and the smart one, and it's just, both of them are just very endearing to each other, despite being sort of like Punch and Judy to each other, and it's kind of a toxic relationship to have in real life with somebody, but it's not really acceptable, but it was amusing in the 90s at the time, and I love both of these characters, and I hope they have good days. And not to be ignoring Calvena, but she was, I want to say she was a regular Solarian citizen, and she turned out to have mad ether powers, so she got bumped up. But I don't remember if she was first class or third class, because I could be remembering Satan onto her a little bit, just because Neo elements and the previous elements all sort of had corresponding predecessors, and Kelvana and Satan were both water elements. Let's see. I forgot. This is just going to be tongue in cheek, but when I was 16, Xenogears had just come out. I was sort of like I was in a space where I couldn't be honest to anybody besides myself about my own sexuality, and Dominia pushed me over an edge. She was my first waifu. She's mean and terrible, and everything that she did, like, while she was under Solaris was bad, but she is one of the ones who sort of woke up near the end and tried to pull Ramses in, like, pull Ramses's head out of his ass when he was when he was doing the final breakdown. And, like, I was not expecting a sort of bit player character to have that much depth to her. She sort of struck me as the, sort of like Helga Pataki, just like, oh my love, that I can't say that I love, who is in love with somebody else, please love me, kind of person. And I was sort of the same kind of person in school too, so it was like, Dominia, my love, you don't know I exist, but you don't exist, so I love you. Yeah. I'm very fond and protective of the girls, and I love writing for them. I think that's all the words I have.
Well, that was great.
That was great.
Yes.
They were very, very lovable characters.
Yeah, they were. Like, every time they appeared, it's always, like, pretty fun.
They're also interesting. They were interesting as well too. I just remember the first time I saw them when I was a kid. The very first thing I thought was like, oh, magical girls. Oh, they're badass.
Yeah, I would always think of them as the Power Ranger girls, especially because of that boss.
Yeah. First thought, oh, Sailor Moon. Next thought, no Power Rangers.
Go, go, Power Ranger.
Now I'm thinking
you summed them up very, very well.
Yeah.
Like, Seraphita is like, what is this very powerful squirrel we found in the garbage? Or the rain spout or something. I don't remember where they picked up Seraphita. I will Google for the sake of the podcast. I researched Talon, but not Seraphita. And Seraphita, I think Seraphita's power level is supposed to be the highest of them, so she's supposed to be the de facto leader of the Neo elements, but it's obviously kind of not the case.
Yeah.
Very.
Yeah, Seraphita and Talon's relationship reminds me of Mihoshi and Kione from Tenchi Universe a little bit. It's kind of that dynamic of the dumb one and the kind of the strict, serious one. Not to say that anything was inspired on either, but they just remind me of that.
Yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, it doesn't say much more than she was saved from being processed in the Soylent system by Ramses.
Oh, good thing she was.
Yep. Kara and Ramses be like,
okay,
I will save you from being thrown into the Soylent system.
Yeah. Especially that stuff is kind of not cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Solaris in general was bad. Okay.
I'm trying very hard not to babble about Ramses. So,
well,
yeah,
how about
we're gonna have a lot to talk about with him later.
Yeah. So let's do Grahf,
okay, true.
and then we'll go later.
Yeah.
Okay,
Actually,
give you a little break before we get...
Give me a little break,
go on.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. I do have a question, because when you think about it, did we want to actually include the entirety of Solaris as a section on here? Because the entire, like, army of that and, like, empire of that was actually pretty bad for a good bit.
Yeah. Like, Solaris is absolutely its own enemy, because it's an entire society told the great big lie that they're special and other people aren't. And that's awful and dangerous and done on purpose. I think it was either by the Gazelle. It was either by the Gazelle or the Emperor himself and/or Krillian, but they suck.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're pretty much floating space Nazis.
I didn't want to say it, so thank you for saying that.
That's a heck of a thing to call them.
No problem. But yeah, that's basically it. They're really bad, and they eat people.
Yeah.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, I mean, what's worse than eating people?
But we can, well, I don't know, we can go into more of that later or now or...
Oh, we can go into more of it later. I just figured I would ask because it's like, wait, there's a lot of people in these antagonists that are from Solaris, so that background is just very, very bad and villainous in its own. So should we include it later on?
Yeah,
That's more so my question. Yeah,
that society as a whole is just completely awful. And I apologize that my faves all come from there. I hope that doesn't make me a bad person, but I don't think it does.
No.
It doesn't.
No.
Especially that a lot of the
it does
people
not.
that come from there that you like, they tend to have more colors that just, like,
black and white.
They're not necessarily evil from the start, it's just
Mhm.
from where they've come and the environment they know. Like, they just, turn the way they are, but they eventually evolve further than that, so...
Yeah, they redeem themselves, but pretty
Exactly.
much in all
Mhm.
sorts of different ways, just like how a normal human being would go, which is why we love these characters so much, because they're
Yeah.
so well written in the first place.
Yeah.
They're believable.
Basically.
Also, I kind of hope that our lovely listeners aren't listening to this episode and assuming that we somehow justify and endorse these villains' actions, because not only would that be missing the point of the episode, that's also kind of messed
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
We just...
This is just to talk about villains in games that we like, and talk about the things they've done and what they're going through. We mentioned that many of these villains are from Solaris, and Solaris is kind of a pretty fucked up place. But it goes to show you that when you're brought up in an environment like that, you might grow up to have a warped view of society and do some pretty messed up things.
It's all about the mindset and the look at how you're raised and everything.
Your upbringing determines a lot about your behavior.
Yes.
And how it's important to think for yourself.
Yes.
Yep.
But mainly when it comes to these sources of fiction, we are more so also admiring the depth that are put into these characters, because these days not a lot of people and sources want to go ahead and actually go into these topics. So
yeah, exactly.
It's important to be able to decipher the difference between fiction and reality. We do not condone any of the actions of these characters, and we would never want to do any of this in person. We just, from a fictional standpoint, it's very interesting, it's intriguing, and it's also refreshing to see that there are some people willing to go ahead and show every side of a coin instead of just the black and white of everything.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, like a lot of the characters in this, a lot of the villains in the Xeno series in general are usually more of gray colors, where like they come from a certain environment that turned them the way they are, and they're often extremely complex and
some controversial.
Well developed. Yeah. But yeah.
Exactly.
That aside, so what do we do now? Do we continue with the list, or do we add this Solaris thing before continuing?
I think Solaris later. That's why I was asking about later.
Yeah.
tell you
It's
what.
fine to just...
Let's continue with the next few villains, because I have a feeling that a lot of what we would have said about Solaris, we will cover with them anyways. And if there's more we want to say about Solaris, then we can go back and talk about that. Sound good?
Sounds good. Sounds good. So, shall we go for the next one?
Hold on. Because what I just remembered, this guy, probably not going to spell his name right.
Oh, yeah. That guy.
Fuck that
guy. Shikan.
Yes, indeed, fuck that guy.
I totally forgot about Shikan.
How did
Finally,
we forget
an
about
unfuckable villain?
I mean, he's a lackey of, like, he's basically a tool being used, and yeah, I guess we forgot about him because of that.
He is
because
one
he's
of
a
the
tool.
more black and white villains, and therefore forgettable.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, exactly, yeah. Shikan, he led a coup against Ave, right? And then he usurped the throne from Bart's father.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's just yeah, as you guys said, he's black and white and just a very bleh villain.
Very. He was basically
one of the
like
worst
a tool.
boss fights. That boss fight was terrible.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was being basically manipulated by Solaris, so he's bleh.
Yeah, because Solaris, they did mention at some point, I do remember that, they did mention something like, we don't really care who stands in the throne, so as long as we have our puppet type thing.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And another thing that Solaris did, they had their sticky fingers in as many land conflicts as possible, just to keep the small people small. Which also, fuck them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, now we can move on to a more interesting villain. So yeah, next up we have Grahf. Yeah, next up we have Grahf.
Does anybody want to go ahead and take the floor with this one? Or should we all just take a... Like, should somebody go over the notes and we all just pitch in where we remember? Because this is where one of the more involved discussions for an antagonist for Gear starts.
Yeah. I think I'll let others lead on and I'll come in, because there's a lot of bits that I remember, there's a lot of bits I don't remember, so I think it's gonna help if someone that remembers more do step in.
Well, I mean, Grahf, yeah, is definitely one of the, his story goes across, 500 years? He is one of the earlier incarnations of Fae, Lacan, and he basically had a very big villain switch when he couldn't protect Sophia, his woman he loved, when she sacrificed herself for Nissan, and then he was basically tempted by Miang. Am I correct on that? And that's what kind of turned him evil.
Yeah, I think at some point, Miang was imprisoned in Nissan during the conflict. And after Sophia had died, after Sophia had died, she talked him into something, and then he became evil. I don't exactly remember. But he hung around for 500 years and disconnected himself from his original self. I don't remember how that happened. But that's
I'm sorry. Was it like implied that he did body hopping, or maybe not?
I think so, because I think he, in the current timeline, he inhabits Faye's father's body. So Lacan himself became a spirit and started hopping bodies at some point, which is why he's kind of around. And Faye is the part of the contact that reincarnates. And I don't remember why. I apologize. I should know this.
No.
I'm trying to remember why too.
You're totally fine.
The reason I forget what the reason exactly is too, and I just played this game over like 6 months ago. I can't remember. I cannot remember for the life of me what the explanation was.
I did a.
But he was a shell. He was definitely a shell when he first encountered Faye's father, when he encountered Bakan. I forget why.
Yeah, I did a deep dive on a fic that I wrote in 2015, and I learned all of the wave existence stuff, but I didn't go into Grahf. Look at this Grahf!
I was waiting for somebody to say that.
That's all I got.
But yeah, something's
because
it basically gives power to a bunch of villains through the game, and they often go nuts, and like you defeat them, and Grahf already disappeared or something. That's often what happens. But aside from that, stuff we wrote in here is motivation is to overcome helplessness. How do I say this? And like basically, I think he wants higher power, termination of an endless cycle, destroying the world that is his goal. And yeah, apparently he's defeated by merging with the Zohar. Was it called the Zohar in Xenogears? I always forget.
I think it's called the Zohar modifier. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and from playing Gears first and then going into Saga and seeing the save points being the Zohar in Saga, my first thought was just like, stay away from that thing.
They're spying on us.
Be gone! Be gone!
I went to Saga first and came to Xenogears after, so...
Yeah. Also, from what I'm looking at on a few sources is Grahf was born from Lacan's powerlessness at losing Sophia, and he's a personification of Lacan's will, and he's an incomplete manifestation of the contact's power. So it definitely has to do with the wave existence. I'm still a little unclear on what exactly happened.
I guess when you're as powerful as the contact and a bit of you chips off, that bit is still powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Here we go. Okay, I found it. In 9501, during the Shavat Solaris War, Lacan was reeling from the death of Sophia and desired to find the Zohar in order to gain its power. Coming across a captive Miang in Shavat, he helped her escape, and they went to the land of Bethlehem. There, due to Eliam not being present, as well as Lacan's owning complete spiritual growth as the contact, his contact with the Zohar was incomplete, changing him into Grahf.
So did his body die at that point, or?
It doesn't say anything, so I would imagine yes.
Yeah, and I also noticed that the wiki then confirmed that he did hop from different people's wills. Oh, it says 9510 Graf's physical body died at that point, leaving only his will behind.
Okay.
Grahf,
possessing the will of others, awaiting the next reincarnation of the contact.
Uh-huh. Yeah, he is an intense character.
That is. But that's why we love him.
Well then,
Yes.
yes. He definitely gives off big, like, Darth Vader vibes to me.
Yes.
he just
Yes.
appears and like he's like.
And I think also the hit MMO Final Fantasy XIV, their main villain for 1.0 and 2.0, the design of Grahf was absolutely referenced in the design for Gaius.
That's pretty
Vanderkam.
interesting.
Yeah. But I think, because I think too much about Mr. Van Baelsar, they also pulled from Ramses too for him.
Nice.
Nice. And there isn't, well, maybe I'm overthinking it, but I remember there was an armor or helmet in Xenoblade X that looked very similar to Graf's helmet, but
I don't recall that helmet.
I don't recall
I'll have to
either.
look it up.
Do you remember what that was called?
I don't remember. I used to put it on Bose because I hated Bose, but that made him a little bit more tolerable. But I will look that up after we record. But anyway, do we want to move on to the next one?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, let's go to the next one. Talk about Id.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that the main
Yes.
character counts as a villain in Xenogears.
Yep.
It's so fucking badass. And Id's motivation for killing is very very intense, but also relatable. So, what I remember from my deep dive in 2015, Krillian had been trying to get a bead on the contact and how he reincarnates, and Miang had reincarnated and ended up in Faye's mother's body, and she was able to bring him to Krillian at age 4 so that Krillian could perform terrible experiments on him. I'm not sure if it's a reaction to the abuse combined with the power of the wave existence, or if it was something Krillian did on purpose, but Faye's personality split, and Id became the angry one, and the one who was the most active, and as Faye grew with Id front, he became just like a unstoppable destructive force.
Right. Yeah, because basically Id was the personality that took all of that torture, right? It was just all that experimenting.
Yes.
Ugh.
Yeah, Id was probably the one most awake for it, and then the coward was the one that got to, be protected from it. But the thing is that the way that they explain it, Id and the coward don't split to protect each other. The coward splits off to protect himself and leaves Id to experience the pain.
And that is why he is called the coward.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
That's
Still
all
very
I have to
interesting.
say. Yeah, it's fascinating.
It was really good though. Like there's a lot of that I did not really remember or like see.
Yeah.
But yeah, I also really like whenever he pops in game and just gets super cool with his red neck and all.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I love that red hair.
Yeah, it's so fabulous.
It was
That
also at the
scene
time
where he
it
holds
was
up the Yggdrasil is iconic.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Mhm.
Just fucking throws it at. Who does he throw it at? Does he throw it at Bart or does he throw it at Ramses?
I think he throws it up. He throws it at Bart because at that point I was like, "Oh my god, did he just throw off Bart?" But it was like, no. Whew.
Yeah.
But,
and then, like in the middle of that desert scene where there are no protagonists on screen, and the Xenogears battle music goes like the mirror breaks, is like, holy shit, who am I playing as? And it's a cutscene. You're not playing as either Ramsus or Id. You're just watching them fight each other.
Yeah.
At the time when I remember when Xenogears, when I first got to experience Xenogears, that was my first time actually seeing a type of media where your protagonist is also your antagonist, and it's something I really wish we would see a little bit more love and thought put into, because it's such a interesting and unique kind of way of storytelling, and it is just it's just so good.
Yeah, and it
Gears is
also
good.
makes
Please
sense
play
that it is called id, named after the subconscious mind in one of Freud's works. People listening, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe, because I'm pulling this from something I read a long time ago, but it kind of represents a more primal side of us, and something a little bit more instinctual and more impulsive. And I think that's pretty fitting in Xenogears, since it seems to be a more primal version or a primal side of Fae.
Yes. I can agree with that.
Yeah, I think from what I remember of Freudian stuff is that the id is the uncontained impulse, and the act of restraining the id is something that just happens to keep society in place. So.
Yeah, it is very much an unconscious thing.
And it's even put into play even more in the game, because most of the time when you see id in the game, it's when Faye is unconscious. It's when the coward is completely unconscious. Like the first time you actually get a conversation with him, like a full-on conversation with him, when it's him and Seton. That it was like, oh, okay, this is the same person. Okay, so this isn't like just a separate entity, like in a separate physical entity. This is the same entity in one place. It was just very mind-blowing for me at the time when I was like 14 just watching this. I'm just like, oh,
yeah.
It's very interesting to see like just little bits and whatnot, how you can take something as simple as like a concept from like psychology studies and turn it into a character, and it was pretty decently based off of that. Very good execution.
Yeah, I think Faye, as we know him, is a third personality that may be much more in tune with the original Contact, and like the story resolves itself where the Contact is able to find unity between the coward and id, and they're able to be to work as one person and not like destroy everything indiscriminately.
Yeah.
All right.
I just saw that some stuff got added.
Yeah, because I just remember. I'm just remembering stuff. So yeah, like the Gazel Ministry, definitely probably should talk about them.
Yeah.
I'll be completely 100% honest. I was coming into this full well expecting at least about each of these really, really big segments being anywhere from, like I said, 10 to 45 minutes, because there's just so much. There's no way you can go ahead and just jam pack, like you can condense it. There are some that you can condense, which is why I feel like that's the order that we went in, from like, okay, which ones are the more memorable ones that you only see for like a few seconds, to here's the actual real orchestrators, and here's how complex and ridiculous some of them are.
Yeah.
Like these next ones we're about to talk about, they've been orchestrating and basically behind a lot of terrible events for what? 10,000 years?
Oh, just about.
Yeah. Same
I'll
with
let you
the
guys
one
go
under.
on to that, because I don't remember a whole lot about them.
I also feel like for the ones that are we don't really have much to say about. They're also villains, yeah. We could probably just skip those.
Yeah. Nah, it's more so that these two that these few that we completely forgot, they are actually very integral. It's just that you kind of don't like. It's kind of like when you're playing the game, you don't understand how integral they are to the into the actual like story until it comes to that point. Like the Gazelle Ministry, the first time I saw them, but Gazel, I always call Gazelle because it literally just looks like.
Wait,
Gazelle.
it's not Gazelle?
I thought it was Gazelle too. I've heard some people say Gazelle. I always say Gazelle. So I'm just gonna keep calling them Gazelle
because it's closer to a French pronunciation, and yeah.
Yeah, I've always said
Yeah.
Gazelle.
But anyway, like when I first saw them in the game, but yeah, when I would see them in the game, my first impression was like, okay, these are definitely some people probably controlling the big baddie, but I didn't think, oh, these are actually some like really, 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 really old guys who just go ahead and basically orchestrate everything that aren't actually around or actually technically alive. They're just like wills, like, what?
No, I think talking about the Gazelle Ministry and then going to Emperor Cain and then Ramses is a perfect ramp.
Yes.
I like the idea of talking about them. So here's what I remember about the Gazelle and Emperor Cain. So when the ship crashed, the Eldritch crashed, Emperor Cain, like, Miang... there was a machine that made the Gazelle Ministry, because the Eldritch had a lot of
Catamoni?
Sorry?
Catamoni? Catamoni?
Yeah.
Device, Catamoni?
I think,
Sorry.
Yeah, the Catamoni device within the Eldritch was sort of like designed as an arc ship. So Emperor Cain or Miang pressed a button, and the Gazelle Ministry was born out of this like seed program. Because everybody but Abel had died at that point, and Miang was there. I don't remember how Miang split off from Ellie at that point, but anyway, the Gazelle Ministry apparently had a bunch of things that related them to the other player characters, like Satan and Bart, Rico, Maria. Like, it originally the parts that made them powerful used to belong to the Gazelle Ministry, but as the Gazelle aged and became less human, they lost their special, like, Zohar resonating stuff. And that's probably not even what it's called. But I think it's been long enough that I forget, but Emperor, like, the Gazelle and Emperor Cain and Miang all worked in unison at the time to bring about, or to start to bring about Deus's resurrection. And over time, the goals of the Gazelle and Emperor Cain's goals started to float apart from each other. And the Gazelle and Miang were always just sort of like, oh, we're working to resurrect Deus, and everything else does not matter at all. We'll manipulate whatever we have to manipulate, and, fuck everything else. Deus all the way. Somewhere along the path, something happened to Emperor Cain to make him doubt the Gazelle and Miang. And I think at that point, Krillian was working with Miang and the Gazelle against Emperor Cain, because they recognized he was sort of like floating off from the original goals. And Emperor Cain was thinking to himself, like, what if these people who we've bred like cattle to be food for God, what if they matter? And the whole thing with Emperor Cain sending Satan to the surface to watch Faye is because he had his doubts. And I'm not sure at what point those doubts surfaced, but Ramses is because the gazelle didn't. Emperor Cain said something at some point, or started doing something at some point, that made the gazelle start to distrust Cain. And when he started doing that, they were like, "Hey, Krillian, we should probably clone Emperor Cain, because he can't be killed by anybody but himself. And he won't kill himself, so we need something else to do it." And I think the Ramesses project was started as it was billed as a project to create an artificial contact, so create a separate Fae, because they couldn't find Fae. But then they found Fae. But I don't want to move to Ramses, just in case anybody else has something to say about the gazelle and Emperor Cain.
No, that was super cool.
Yeah, I think that was pretty well. I think that was pretty well summed up, because like I mentioned when we were saying, yeah, these could go ahead and go on. These two in particular, they're so integral to the story, but there's not too much to say about them because it's put out there pretty bluntly. The end results of their meddling, in this case, their decision to go ahead and create Ramses is what is the meat and bones of what we're about to talk about, which I'll go ahead and give it to you. I go ahead and say, go ahead, Kat, please.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go
ahead.
Okay, alright, so, Ramses was created, I think he was about 10 years old, but he wasn't a normal clone. He was a brain in a jar. And I don't remember why he was like that, but they had to be careful about cloning Emperor Cain, because they didn't want just another... because Cain would recognize his own look, because he remembered it, and the Gazelle Ministry also remembered it. So... just trying to find a good, understandable, outside my head way to explain this. I think Ramses was conscious when Faye's mother came to Krillian and was like, "Hey, we don't need this." And he saw, he was witness to everything Miang and Krillian said about, "Hey, this project was going to be pretty important to us, but now we don't really need this at all anymore." So it was just like, "Hey, you're 10 years old and you think that your science dad loves you. You've got this really cool jar that you live in, and you're gonna be an adult one day, and you're gonna rule the world. But except for the part where somebody else exists now, and you don't, you get flushed down the drain and into the garbage chute." I watched a video that went into a story that was written about Ramses that was not translated into English, but when Ramses as the brain in a jar ended up in the garbage pile, there was a Solarian citizen. I think he was... It's always either third or first class. There was a boy named Karan Becca, who was rummaging around in the garbage for... I don't remember why, but the brain Ramses was like, "Oh, I will ride you to the top," and he sort of consumed this poor boy and took over his body, just because he was intent on surviving. The one string with Ramses is that he's fucking stubborn and he wants to survive, and he wants to live. And and he's also huge inferiority complex. So he's always going on about his prospects, and his prospects were to be like a replacement for somebody important, whether it be Emperor Cain or Faye. So he's got this body of this, I think it was like 13 or 15-year-old kid, and goes back home to where his parents live, and he pretends to be this kid who apparently was not very well behaved, but all of a sudden he's very well behaved, and I think at some point to throw his parents off the scent, quote unquote parents, he fakes an accident, and his parents' building burns with them both inside of it, and then I think he gets to enroll in Jugend, the Gebler Academy. After that, just because like it got a little weird pretending to be somebody who is not. But the words that Krillian had put in his head was like, haha, garbage, garbage, garbage. Ramses got to repeating to himself whenever he made a mistake. And let's see. So Ramses, as an adolescent, had this like extremely intense revenge / have to prove yourself kind of thing happen to him. And I think whenever he noticed that there was somebody being sent to the Soylent system or expunged despite him seeing use in them, he was like, no, you come closer, you can work for us, it doesn't matter. Because I think the initial act of being flushed down the drain sort of like broke any kind of attachment Ramses had to Solarian ideas of superiority. Like, it doesn't matter who you are or where you came from. He came from literally the gutter. And I think his want to survive and build up and want to make sure that people who were somewhat worthy got a chance ended up accidentally being good, despite his intentions just being kind of cruddy and bad and seated in revenge. Because he saved Sigurd from the Soylent system. I think Satan got in trouble, and he was like, no, it doesn't matter. If Satan Izuki is a third-class citizen, he is an element. I have to do like a promo, a wrestling promo as Ramses get like a wig or something. I forget where Jessi came in, but Jessi was a senpai at school, and basically Ramses got in his group and started not really co-opting, but like Ramses and Jessi, Billy's father, got to hang out, and Jessi was kind of anti-establishment himself, and that aligned with Ramses's it really doesn't matter where you come from thing. And the elements formed as kind of a anti-establishment group within the school, which was very dangerous, and I am very surprised that Emperor Cain and the Gazelle Ministry and Krillian saw this and let it continue. But it did, and it was very interesting. It's like my favorite part of Xenogears. But the thing with Ramses is that despite him wanting, or in spite of / because of him wanting nothing but revenge and the chance to like say, hey, I get to exist, that's always pulled into question. Krillian and Miang always knew how to push his buttons and how to control him. So the moment Faye comes into the picture, it's like, oh, well, we don't need you because Faye. And Ramses just sort of like fluffs up like a gifted character and is like, no, you need me! And I'm losing steam, and I apologize.
It's alright. Take
No,
your
it's
time.
okay. It's a lot.
I think
It's a lot.
Yeah,
It's fine.
Ramses was able to thank you. Ramses was able to live off the radar more or less for a while, but by the time I think the all of the elements together, like Jessi, Satan, Sigurd, and Ramses, were all the four of them together. Current Miang reincarnated into the body of Miang Hawa, and she was probably a sort of like just a regular Gebler or Yugen student, and she recognized Ramses, and she was like, "Oh, hey Krillian, guess what? Guess who's here?" And I think there is a very there is a thread where I take a look at something and I see, oh hey, here's this boy who wants to build other people up, and there's these boys that he hangs out with. One of them is very queer coded, Sigurd, and I ship Sigurd and Ramses like really really hardcore, and like Miang sort of butting into and complicating their relationship, I see as a huge negative, and negative overall for Ramses in general, because Miang purposely pulls Ramses off pulls Ramses off his original goals and more into, oh hey, you can do this other thing and affect small, slow change instead of big, radical change that you want. And I think that's part of the whole Solaris as the enemy, Deus as the enemy, the Gazelle as the enemy kind of thread. And part of why I'm really not into Miang. But like it ultimately puts Ramses in a place where he questions himself and isn't built up and is pulled away from the people who care about him enough to question him, into a place where people who are like empty people just say, hey, you're great for no reason, and into a space where he's the senpai. He's being looked to, and he's expected to do things that a person who is looked up to does. So by the time Ramses saves the girls, he's no longer the radical, monstrous person he used to be. And there's very little hope of him being that person anymore. It's just like he has just become the person Miang and Krillian needs him to be. And like when Faye actually comes onto the scene, it's like that is the thing that has been going to happen finally happening, and he just sort of like gives up. Like he melts. Like everything that he tried to build unglues just to swipe at Faye, and it's wild to look at and like extremely entertaining to see. And based on my own personal stuff, I relate to it a lot. And that's why Ramses is my favorite character and why I'm talking so much. And thank you for letting me talk so much.
It's alright. It was great.
Now I need a water.
Yes, I hydrate,
Yes.
please.
Please go get some water, yes.
Just popping in to
go
say
get some
hydration
water.
is very important.
Thank you.
So
It very much is.
Okay, good. And Jess, you should definitely pop back out because we are still in the Xenogears super spoiler territory.
I will do that.
We love you,
Sorry.
I love you too.
Yee.
Alright, I was just about to say, our next one, I believe, was highlighted by Brielle, who wanted to talk about Miang. And since we just spoke about Miang, well, Why not go in there?
Oh boy. So Miang, known as Mia Hawa in the like Japanese translation, is probably the actual main antagonist of the game, through her constant manipulating, orchestrating all the strings behind the scenes, all that sort of stuff. And when you first meet her, you just think she's this sub lieutenant that basically acts kind of like Rams's secretary. That's when you first see her, you're just like, okay, you're either gonna look pretty or you're gonna be like messed up. And then you find out how messed up her actual involvement of the story is, and you're just like, what? It's like, it's very like simple. You can simplify this a lot with her, but the lengths this lady goes to go ahead and carry out her entire purpose in creation is just like, it's ridiculous. She is basically a duplicate of the mother of all humanity. And is basically the what is she called again? She is the, where is it? I had it in my notes. She is the complement. She's the complement, whereas the main female character of the series, Eliam, is the antitype. They were basically two halves of the same coin, except one was made to basically comfort the original contact, and the other was made to go ahead and go into the big baddie. However, even though like Deuce is definitely like the actual antagonist of the game, Miang is definitely the actual antagonist and the one you want to watch out for. Cunning, manipulative, literally goes ahead and pulls everything into her favor. The most amusing thing, and it's even in the notes here, is that she must have been given bad instructions, because she has failed at her designated like programming to revive Deuce. Like, because her entire goal is just to revive Deuce at any cost. And but it's also interesting because of how often she goes ahead and goes to do that. But a more intriguing thing, like to me at least, from what I noticed when I played through the game multiple times, is she's really good at faking being an actual person. Like, to a creepy degree that you can only really tell that she is definitely not human from the get-go on your second playthrough, because you're a little bit more aware of it. But something that I really enjoyed was the fact that you just like, okay, is she human or is she acting like a human? We don't know at that point. You don't know when you first go ahead and see her. You just see her as this like side background character in the fight when they're going to get Margie. When you first encounter her and you have to fight Ramses, she's right next to him in the background, basically just looking like a secretary, as I mentioned earlier. And you think, oh, she must just be like, secretary. Oh, mister, can I help you with this? Mister, can I help you with that? And then you find out, no, she's actually the one orchestrating everything. She is literally manipulating this poor guy out of all those really good ideals that Kat went ahead and went off on, because he had really good intentions, but it was pulled away completely, and she basically just wanted to go ahead and stick to what was probably her protocol. The actual like definition of she's a whole, like, load of, like, wait a sec, no, that's not the word I want. As you can tell, I get a little overexcited about this because this is a character I don't get to talk about a lot with. My husband's still playing through the game, and he has no idea about this other than, why does one of my main antagonists look a lot like this one? He has no idea of how much inspiration and influence that this particular character has had on my own works. So I can't wait to see his reaction. So I don't get to talk about this a lot because I'm trying not to spoil him because I want him to go into it completely blind. So little excited and whatnot. But it's just she basically, like we said, she just wants to revive Deuce. And she'll do that at any what's the word I'm looking for? Any means necessary. Any means necessary. Any cost, any means necessary. Manipulate, subdue, cool humanity, literally pit other parts of the playing field towards each other, because another thing that she does is she is the executioner. She is the one who goes ahead and purposely throws Faye into prison in I forget how to pronounce its name. Where is the prison located? I know it starts with a K.
Oh, in Kislev?
Kislev, yes, in Kislev. She's the executioner that goes ahead and delivers Faye and his gear to Kislev. And probably just because she wants to see what will go ahead and go on. Another thing that is interesting to note is that she's able to go ahead and go through many, many bodies. By the time she gets to Miang, in the present timeline of the game, she's on her 998th body. That is a lot of people to live through.
Wow.
A lot of people to live through. I believe when she finally takes over Ilium, that is like one away from being 1,000. It's ridiculous when you think about that.
Yeah. And one of those bodies being Faye's mom.
Yes, that's because all women possess the genetic factor necessary to become the next incarnation of Mia. When the current incarnation dies, the genes activate into another woman's body just like that. So I think it's actually implied that even if she like goes ahead and like she's in a body and then she basically just like dies, she just instantly takes over another person. I don't think she's actually fully reincarnated into a lot of them. I think it's like snap of the fingers. It's just like that.
Yeah, don't they just turn into her?
Is shown as
Yeah,
which
she just inhabits them.
Yeah, which is why I feel that which is why, at least when I played it, I felt like that's one of the reasons why Faye had such bad trauma and basically ended up making another personality to be able to take the abuse, because I think he was used to a very kind and caring mother, and then Miang basically just like took over and turned her extremely cold, and he just had to go ahead and endure through it because she had her reasons, Krillian had his reasons, and that's really all there is to her motive. She is why a computer, like basically a program, should not be in charge of making sure a gigantic blob of death, as I like to call it, comes back. Because she does mess up a lot. Yes. She messes up a lot. But just the fact that you take this character who looks like she's going to be so insignificant, and then you find out, no, that's your bad guy.
Yeah.
That's the one you should want to try and go ahead and find a way to get rid of. But guess what? You can't, because every single time you try and get rid of her, she comes back again Which isn't that how she actually ended up isn't that how she actually ended up in Ilium?
So, she basically goaded Ramses into killing her, and the closest woman to her at that time was Ellie.
Yep.
So, yeah, she lined that up pretty perfect.
Yeah, she did that on purpose. It's like, is it because she realized that is the other like part that's split off from her, or is it also just because she realized that, oh, I could use this against a contact and finally carry out my purpose? It's like, you don't completely know. It could be any which way.
I like to think that Miang can recognize Ellie, but I don't know the science of it. But I do know now that the translation of the Xenogears anthology, like the comic anthology, there is a few moments that Miang has where she's like, what if I just wanted to sit back and like Ramses? But then she goes back to just, following her programming.
Yeah, like I said, sometimes she's able to go ahead and fool people into believing that she's actually a human a little too well. It's like she's able to go ahead and actually like feel and replicate human emotions. But like I said, in your second playthrough, once you're aware of all this, you start noticing the little telltale signs. Like, you're a little too calm for a situation like this. You're able to keep your cool together a little too well. Are you sure, you're not just, what's the word you're called? Just acting along? And that's one of the, like, the more interesting things I found, I saw about her character, is you're really just a manipulative thing, because we don't even know, like, if like what she was before she was just a program, and why she was able to take on like such a close genetic like a genetic like a copy of like a human in the first place. And we'll never find out. It's all just speculation at this point, but she's just very fascinating to me. And I think I'm just gonna go ahead and stop right there, because I could go on for another like 20 minutes, but I don't want to just go ahead and go in circles.
Yeah, let's go on. Next one.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, speaking of Miang, we are going on next to Krillian. Which, as we've kind of already gone into, besides, kind of messing up Ramses' life, Krillian started off everything by being, he's been around for a while. He's been around for 500 years, and I guess originally he was going to assassinate Sophia, but he defected instead and basically fell in love with her, even though she's like 10 years younger than him. But then there was that
problematic age gap there.
Yeah. Ooh, yeah. Yeah. So then from there, he developed a rivalry of sorts with Lacan, who also was in love with Sophia. And then there was the Solaris Shivat Nissan War. And once Sophia sacrificed herself, that's kind of where both Lacan and Krillian kind of split off into their own kind of... Yeah, sorry.
Oh, it's okay. Honestly, I don't remember enough about Krillian to add on to it.
Yeah, just not much I can really add to this. He's just trying to overcome his own helplessness and basically create God.
Yeah. And he's
basically
obsessed
create
with Sophia.
create God and return back to Earth for some reason. I don't remember exactly. But he was also a huge simp for Sophia.
Very much so.
And at the end, he basically just kind of achieves his goal a little bit. He basically, I mean, not a little bit. He does kind of F's off and in search of going back to Earth, right? Basically, at the end, or am I misremembering that?
He goes off with the wave. He goes off with the wave existence to wherever the wave existence goes, which is kind of weird that the wave existence would be okay with that, seeing that he worked for a long time to keep it in its space. But I'm not the wave existence, and the wave existence can do what it wave existence can do what it wants because it's the wave existence.
Yeah.
That's a good explanation.
That is a very good explanation.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it'll do what it does.
Krillian was kind of interesting, mainly because he was one of the more human antagonists. And yet he was the only one who really got I guess you could say out of the main villains, he's the only one who got like, oh, you got off pretty light considering all the crap you pulled off.
Yeah.
Considering all the shit you pulled off in the background, just like
Yeah,
you get to
pretty
go
much
be
showed
all
up really
happy
late
with the
in the
wave
game,
existence.
Yeah. Exactly.
He's like, hey buddy, I've hated you for years and I want your girlfriend. And your higher power. How about you just hand that over? No? Okay. I'm leaving with the higher power.
Yeah, that's basically him in a nutshell. From like a side, you still got to think about like what his character had to have been like, because how was he okay? He like what went ahead and like made him like go ahead and do some of the things that he did. Like, what would you think would go ahead and like possess somebody to do something like that? Because he put quite a few characters through some really fucked up shit when some of them weren't even born.
Yeah, I think there was a point at which Krillian had basically immortality given to him, and at the time just wanted to make it so that he could be with Sophia at some point again. Instead, he just sort of became embroiled in the machinations of the Gazelle Ministry and Miang, and never really quite ended up with what he really wanted. And I don't feel bad for him. And I think one of the big things is that he couldn't. Lacan could not save Sophia from dying, and neither could Krillian. And I think finding out how to cheat death and then seeing Faye reincarnate over and over again, and getting to be with the person that he wanted to be with, sort of like added to the revenge, but also Krillian doesn't seem to be as much of a mess as Ramses does, despite being like initially motivated by the loss of a loved one.
Mm-hmm. I still love the little.
Yeah,
yes,
that's good.
Let's
almost
finish
there.
Xenogears.
Yes, we are at the final bit of Xenogears, and this is.
I was gonna say he was a final boss, but then I just remembered that
Nope.
Deus is not the final boss, technically at least.
Nope. But it is the reason for this. It's the origin and basically the whole entire purpose for the conflict of the entire game.
Mm-hmm. It's all to put together this old weapon, basically.
This like organic weapon in a sense too. This like weird bioweapon that, if I remember correctly, the reason it was even such a problem was it was deemed too dangerous for its location, so it was being sent off, and the first thing that could go ahead and take it because of it's such a gigantic size was like, wasn't it just like a normal cruiser? Wasn't it just like a normal like cruise ship?
I don't think it was like a pleasure cruiser, but it was some sort of arc ship.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Like when I say cruise ship, that is exactly what I mean. Like it cruises but it's like it carries a bunch of like civilians basically.
Okay.
Yeah. Cuz it was super super powerful, and it started to take over the ship because it realized it was about to go ahead and be destroyed. And it overrode the ship and crashed to the planet, which then, basically set the motions in work. The only thing that went ahead and went completely astray from its intended purpose and project was Abel had contact with the Zohar.
Yeah, I think the Zohar was intended to power it, which is why it wanted to control it. But it's also why I think the Zohar modifier was used to power it, and the Zohar modifier trapped the wave existence within it, and Deus needed it to survive. So
yeah. And that's basically, like, without going into way more detail, that's basically what Deus was. That is basically what Deus was.
Save the game?
Wait, are you there, Jess?
Hello?
Are you
Jessie?
there?
Yes.
Oh, hi!
How
It didn't pick up, sorry.
Audacity
cool.
definitely did, so we're good.
Okay, cool. I'll just do some editing and probably put this in our bloopers as well.
Yes.
Okay.
I need water.
Go for
Okay.
it.
No problem.
I guess this is our hydrate moment. I'm gonna do that as well.
Hydrate.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, will we need to make each series its own episode?
So, let's not spend too much time on this. Yeah, this is why, like, we should do 2 sections, since I know y'all like to ramble.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Like,
what's best.
once I'm on the other side of Ramses, I will shut up forever. So,
Fair enough.
Oh,
unless you want me to.
No. Of course not. No.
talk.
Alright. So
Well,
the
since
next part, I
Miang
believe
came up.
was
Oh, are you?
sorry, Jen, you were cutting out a little bit.
Oh,
But
sorry.
yes.
I was just gonna do the same thing you're doing, but go on.
I'm hungry.
What the heck is it? Up. We lost somebody.
Who did we lose?
Who'd we lose?
It was HK.
Lost Mary.
No.
Oh no.
Oh, wait a
Keep
second.
going. She said,
Yeah. Is her connection
Okay.
messed
Welcome
up?
back.
Welcome
Yeah.
back. Okay.
I don't know if
Um,
it's fully back, but let me just check. Yeah. The whole modem basically crashed for a second.
Yeah, just keep
Okay.
going.
But I think the connection
Basically,
is good now, I think.
she is just like we said. She's
or Krillian. Oh, I'm still a robot.
It's
aren't I?
Krillian.
We hear you.
we're good. We hear you.
Okay. Okay, yes. Yes, it is Krillian.
Yay! Does that mean we're done with Xenogears?
Yeah,
Oh,
we
yeah?
actually got through it.
I guess I'm gonna ping our two friends that were sitting in the background.
Yes.
Okay. And I think what I'm...
Yeah.
Yes.
You can tell him to come back.
And I think...
Do you want to, like, split the
I think
episode
what
here?
I'll do that. I'll make this one episode. We'll keep the recording going, but I'll just split it into, like, 3 episodes.
Yeah,
Sounds
we can
good.
split it here.
Well, 3 episodes, but who
139,
knows how long
so-
Xenoblade will take us.
Please switch to disc 2.